So without further ado, let's get into the first one. I think the Milwaukee Bucks can beat the Brooklyn Nets. Now, the Brooklyn Nets have established themselves as the juggernaut of the NBA. And rightfully so. When you have Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and Kevin Durant on the same team, 3 players that are top 5 in their position, some may argue top 3 in their position, you are going to be a dominant team. Some might even say, and a lot of people are saying, a super team. And after my initial takes about the Brooklyn Nets when they first got James Harden, I have changed my mind. I do believe they're a super team. And while they are not a team to be messed with, they are a team that's going to be a tough out even if they do get eliminated. A couple months after the trade, I still think the Milwaukee Bucks are capable of beating the Brooklyn Nets. The reason being is that 1, the Milwaukee Bucks match up really well to the Brooklyn Nets, and number 2, Giannis. You see, while I understand that the Brooklyn Nets are a more talented team, they have more star power, they have more name value. A 7-game series is more than just who has the better names. It is about matchups and how players fit on the court. And when you look at the Milwaukee Bucks, they match up really well to the Brooklyn Nets. More specifically defensively, because they have defenders like Drew Holiday, Chris Middleton, and Giannis to throw at guys like Kyrie Irving, James Harden, and Kevin Durant. They have great help defenders like Brook Lopez. They added PJ Tucker at the trade deadline, who is injured right now, although I am assuming that he's going to come back healthy for the playoffs. And while I'm not saying that they have the personnel to stop the Nets' big 3, you don't stop Kyrie Irving, you don't stop James Harden, you don't stop Kevin Durant, especially when they're all playing on the same team. The Milwaukee Bucks, however, do have some of the best, if not the best personnel to slow down that team as much as possible. And on the offensive end, Giannis. Let's get into my Giannis point. Now, Giannis Antetokounmpo has gained this reputation of being a playoff choker, a playoff underperformer, and there is a lot of truth to that. The last 2 years, Giannis Antetokounmpo has won the MVP award. And in the last 2 years, Giannis has underperformed in the series he was eliminated in, primarily because of the weaknesses in his game that gets emphasized in the playoffs. However, I think a key thing to realize about Giannis is that the main reason he was stopped by the Miami Heat, he was stopped by the Toronto Raptors, is not just because Giannis isn't that good. It's because the Toronto Raptors and the Miami Heat had the personnel to handle Giannis. When you look at the Toronto Raptors, when they had Marc Gasol, Serge Ibaka, Kawhi Leonard, and all of these pieces, those were the right pieces to slow down a player like Giannis. When you look at the Miami Heat, they have Bam Adebayo, they have Jimmy Butler, they have Jay Crowder, they have the pieces where you can build that wall on Giannis and have it be very effective. And when you're being coached by defensive-minded coaches like a Nick Nurse, like a Eric Spoelstra, then that adds to the effectiveness of this personnel. However, when you look at the Brooklyn Nets, they simply don't have the personnel to stop Giannis. And all of these weaknesses that were exposed by the Miami Heat and the Toronto Raptors, I'm not entirely sure if the Brooklyn Nets can do the same. Matter of fact, I would bet that they can't do the same because of the personnel that they have. And it's not like their coach emphasizes defense as well. They're being head coached by Steve Nash and have Mike D'Antoni as an assistant coach who, if I'm just going to be honest, feels like the real coach of the team. And in a 7-game series where Giannis Antetokounmpo can't be stopped, I feel like the Milwaukee Bucks at least have a better chance of beating the Brooklyn Nets than most people give them credit for. Take number 2. Zach Lavine is better than Karl Anthony Towns. Now, that seems like a very random take. However, I don't think people really get the significance of me even applying this take. Because mind you, back in 2017-2018, the Timberwolves had all of Andrew Wiggins, Zach Lavine, and Karl Anthony Towns on their team, and they were supposedly the best young trio in the league. You had Karl Anthony Towns emerging as one of the best bigs in the league, Andrew Wiggins is the next T-Mac, and Zach Lavine is a 20-point-per-game scorer as a third option, and they were all under 22. However, in 2017, the Minnesota Timberwolves traded Zach Lavine for Jimmy Butler in hopes of having better success in the short run. And it made sense to trade Zach Lavine because he just tore his ACL, and he was considered the worst out of the three. Also, mind you that Karl Anthony Towns was considered as an untouchable because he was a bona fide future superstar and was a top 5 most valuable asset in the league. So fast forward 4 years, for us to even have this discussion between Zach Lavine and Karl Anthony Towns is not a slight at all to Karl Anthony Towns, but the reason I'm having this conversation is to more so compliment Zach Lavine on how much he's grown in Chicago. And yes, I do understand that Karl Anthony Towns has had a tough 2020, and I'm honestly really surprised that he's even playing this year. And shout out to Karl Anthony Towns for staying strong throughout this time, and also condolences for all of the family members he's lost. However, again, I am just talking about basketball here, and this is more so a compliment to Zach Lavine. And even if you look at Karl Anthony Towns' last healthy year, where he had a dominant season, I would still like to make the case that I feel like Zach Lavine is a better player. Because when you look at Karl Anthony Towns and Zach Lavine, these are two players that have minimal playoff success. So looking at wins really doesn't mean anything. And when you're looking at the defensive end, they're both nothing special. They are average defenders and at best slightly above average in some days. So with those two things in mind, now we just look at their offensive skill set. And while yes, Karl Anthony Towns is an extremely talented scorer, in 2020, he averaged 27 points a game on 51, 40, 80 splits as a big man, shooting 8 threes a game and shooting 41% from 3. Those are really good numbers. When you look at Zach Lavine and what he's proven to be this year, I would argue that Zach Lavine is just as good, if not a better scorer as Karl Anthony Towns because of what he can do off the dribble, moving off ball as well. But as a passer and as a facilitator, I believe Zach Lavine is also more valuable in that sense. And going back to the scoring production, when you look at Zach Lavine this year, 45 games into this season, which is a really big sample size, that's more than half of the NBA season, Zach Lavine is roughly averaging 28 points on 51% from the field, 43% from 3 on 8 threes a game, and 87% from the line. Again, shout out to both of these players, but really I just wanted to have this conversation, this take, because I think we need to put into perspective how much Zach Lavine has grown since he's come to Chicago. Take number 3, the New Orleans Pelicans should start Zion Williamson at the 5. This take is honestly a wild one. I feel like it's the most unpopular out of the 3 I have for this video. And my main reasoning is really where I think the game is heading in. I feel like the game is heading into a direction where all 5 players on the court will be 6'5" and up, and bigs with guard-like skills that can switch on defense will be preferred. Insert Zion Williamson, who is 6'7", 270 plus pounds, and is an athletic freak. Now, the biggest concern with putting Zion at the 5 is definitely defense. Number 1, right now 6'7" as a full-time starting center is still really short, and I understand that. And number 2, Zion Williamson defensively was not as good as people thought he'd be going into the NBA because of the weight that he's gained since he's come into the league, and I understand that. However, this season Zion Williamson has shown that he can be healthy for once, and he's also been in better shape the last couple of months as well. So if he continues this progression of being more healthy, of being more in shape, and if he can get back to that Duke athleticism that he had, Zion Williamson defensively could be a beast still. And mind you, he's still only 20 years old and has so much room to grow and develop. And while yes, Zion is 6'7", he is bigger than most 6'9" dudes, let's just be honest. His impact and feel on the court feels more like a 6'9" dude than a 6'7" dude. And again, if he can get back to that Duke athleticism, I really think he can be a defensive beast still. But offensively speaking as well, I feel like Zion could be truly unlocked as a 5 as well. If you run Zion at the 5 and surround him with shooters and playmakers, I feel like that would be extremely deadly. Also, given the fact that Zion has given you glimpses that he can space the floor and that he can honestly handle the rock himself, Zion has potential to reinvent the 5 position. But also, another reason why I'm a big proponent of them trying this sooner rather than later is because even if they get worse defensively this season, they're already the 3rd worst defense in the league as it is. So it's not like they're this great defensive team that's just gonna collapse if they put Zion at the 5 anyways. So you know, why not try it out for 10-15 games and see what happens? Watch this video on your screen where I talked about the Boston Celtics and how they got to this point. But with that being said, I'm out. Peace.